At 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, Maggie sent me a text. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." It seemed ordinary, but the period at the end felt off. Careful, too normal. I knew then that something was wrong. I sat on the couch staring at my phone. Everything around me was in its place. Our home, our life. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a notification from our bank. A withdrawal of $800 from our joint account. Made downtown. Maggie's office was far from there. I started looking through our bank statements, tracking previous withdrawals, always from the same downtown ATM on nights when Maggie claimed to be working late. The pattern was clear. I grabbed my laptop and opened Maggie's email. I found what I was looking for quickly. Messages from Ryan Pierce, a name she'd mentioned casually before. They'd been having an affair since March. Valentine's Day emails, secret trips, and hotel bookings. Everything I never suspected. I closed the laptop slowly, calm in a way that should have worried me. My phone rang, and Maggie's photo popped up. I answered, hearing her warm voice. She told me she was still at work, but I knew it was a lie. Her tone was too casual, too practiced. After the call, I sat in silence, surrounded by the life we'd built. I started planning. Maggie was now a problem that needed solving. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk in the spare bedroom we called Elliot's office and started building a file. Data analysis is about seeing what others miss. It's about taking seemingly random information and finding the story it's trying to tell. I was good at my job. Very good. I'd spent 12 years at DataCorp finding patterns in consumer behavior, predicting market trends, uncovering fraud. Now I was going to find every pattern in my wife's betrayal. I started with location data. Maggie's phone had a family tracking app we'd installed years ago, back when we were pretending we needed it for safety reasons. She'd forgotten about it. I hadn't. I pulled up 4 months of location history and exported it to a spreadsheet. The data didn't lie. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 months, her phone pinged from the Hyatt downtown between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. On the nights she said she was showing houses to clients, she was there. On the nights she said she was having dinner with colleagues, she was there. Room 812. I called the hotel from a burner app, pretending to be Ryan, saying I'd lost my receipt from my last stay. The helpful clerk gave me the dates without hesitation. 12 visits, 12 nights. I built a timeline, a spreadsheet color-coded by type of lie. Red for fake work events, blue for supposed client meetings, green for made-up girls' weekends. By dawn, I had a document that looked like a Picasso painting if Picasso had been a data analyst with a cheating wife. The sun came up, I made coffee, I showered, I put on a gray button-down shirt and went to work like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. At my desk, surrounded by monitors and the gentle hum of server fans, I started Phase 2. I needed to know exactly who Ryan Pierce was, not the sanitized LinkedIn version or the carefully curated social media presence. I needed the truth. I ran a comprehensive background check through a PI service we used at work for employment verification. Ryan was 45, divorced twice, worked in commercial real estate development. He had an LLC registered in Delaware, which was always a red flag. Nobody registers in Delaware unless they're hiding something. I dug deeper. His company, Pierce Development Group, had 3 ongoing projects, all of them financed through a combination of private investors and bank loans. He was leveraged to the hilt, the kind of financial house of cards that looked impressive until you examined the foundation. Then I found the really interesting part. Ryan had been sued twice in the past 5 years. Once by a former business partner for fraud, settled out of court. Once by an investor who claimed Ryan had misrepresented the value of a property, also settled out of court. Ryan Pierce was a con man with good hair and better suits. I pulled up his social media profiles. Instagram showed a carefully crafted life of luxury. Expensive restaurants, exotic cars, designer watches. But I cross-referenced the images with the dates and found something fascinating. The watch he wore in one photo was a different watch 3 days later, despite both being supposedly the same Rolex. The car in his driveway changed weekly. Rentals, all of it. Ryan was renting his lifestyle, projecting success while drowning in debt. My phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. "Good morning. How'd you sleep?" "Fine," I typed back. "You?" "Exhausted. Late night. Coffee later?" "Can't. Big project at work." "Okay, dinner tonight? I'll cook." She wouldn't cook. She'd order takeout and pretend she made it, the same way she pretended everything else in our marriage was real. "Sure," I replied. I spent the rest of the day building the file. By 5 p.m., I had everything. Bank records, location data, emails, flight confirmations, hotel receipts, credit card statements. I had proof of the affair documented in 19 different ways. But I didn't want proof. I wanted something else. I wanted revenge. Not the hot, immediate kind of revenge. Not slashed tires and confrontations in public places. That was messy, emotional, temporary. I wanted something cold and permanent. Something that would dismantle Ryan Pierce's life the same way he'd helped dismantle mine. I went home at 6:30. Maggie was in the kitchen, wearing yoga pants and a tank top, her hair in a messy bun. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. That was part of the problem. I'd spent 15 years being grateful that someone like her had chosen someone like me, and I'd never stopped to wonder if she might unchose me someday. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing my cheek. "How was work?" "Interesting," I said. "Found some unexpected patterns in the data." "That's good, right?" "Depends on the pattern." She didn't catch the edge in my voice. She was too busy pulling containers of Thai food from a bag, arranging them on plates like she'd cooked them herself. We ate dinner. We talked about her day. She told me about a house she'd sold, a young couple with a baby on the way. She was animated, excited. She was lying through her teeth about where she'd actually been, but the enthusiasm was real. That was the thing about Maggie. She genuinely loved selling houses. She just loved Ryan more. After dinner, she went upstairs to take a bath. I heard the water running, heard her humming. I cleaned the kitchen, loaded the dishwasher, and thought about the next steps. I needed to get close to Ryan without him knowing who I was. I needed access to his business, his finances, his vulnerabilities. I needed to become his worst nightmare wearing a friendly face. My phone buzzed. An email notification. I opened it and smiled. Ryan's company was looking for a data consultant. They needed someone to analyze their investment portfolios and market projections for a major pitch to investors next month. I had just found my way in. I applied to Pierce Development Group using a pseudonym, Elliot Thomas, and got an interview. Ryan's office, a glass tower downtown, gave off an air of success. He hired me immediately after a brief interview, seeing me as a competent consultant, unaware of my true intentions. For 2 weeks, I had full access to his business and started identifying weaknesses. Pierce Development was a fragile operation, dependent on constant cash flow with little backing for its high-risk ventures. I focused on Ryan's biggest project, a $40 million development where he had personally guaranteed $12 million in financing. I began to manipulate the situation. I tweaked market analyses to make the project look less attractive, raising small concerns. I also created an anonymous blog and subtly raised doubts about the project, sending it to real estate investors. One investor, concerned, emailed Ryan, creating a ripple of uncertainty. I escalated slowly. I tipped off an environmental group about the project's issues, causing a delay in a crucial review. This pushed back the project's timeline, resulting in higher costs and putting more pressure on Ryan to go back to investors for additional funding. Meanwhile, at home, Maggie grew more distant. I noticed her changes. New perfume, gym membership, signs that she was getting closer to Ryan. One night she asked if I wanted to talk, but I kept it to myself. I continued my work, subtly feeding journalists information, raising more doubts. The first article about the company's financials was published, raising concerns that spread quickly among investors. Ryan, ever confident, handled the pressure, but I could see the strain. Small mistakes began to slip through. I was just getting started. The divorce papers arrived at Maggie's office on a Thursday afternoon. I'd timed it carefully, knowing she'd be between appointments, knowing she'd have time to read them and panic before driving home. I'd filed through an attorney in the city, someone she didn't know. The petition was straightforward. Irreconcilable differences, equitable division of assets, no alimony requested. I wasn't asking for anything except the clean break I should have initiated months ago. She called me 37 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. I was sitting in Ryan's office finishing up a projection model that was about to make his financial problems significantly worse. When I finally got home at 7, she was sitting in the living room with a glass of wine. The divorce papers spread across the coffee table. "What the hell is this?" she said. Her eyes were red, but I couldn't tell if she'd been crying or if it was anger. "Paperwork," I said, setting my briefcase down. Pretty self-explanatory. "You're divorcing me, just like that? No conversation, no warning?" I sat down across from her. "Would you have preferred a conversation about your affair first?" The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Room 812, Hyatt downtown, Tuesdays and Thursdays for 3 months, Palm Springs last month. Should I continue?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "How did you—" "I'm a data analyst, Maggie. I notice patterns." "Elliot, listen. It's not what you think," I almost laughed. That line, that exact line, like we were in a bad sitcom instead of the wreckage of a marriage. "It's exactly what I think," I said. You've been sleeping with Ryan Pierce since March. You've stolen from our joint account to fund your affair. You've lied to me approximately 78 times in the last 4 months, not counting the lies by omission. You counted? I count everything. She stood up, started pacing. Okay, yes, I've been seeing Ryan, but you don't understand. You're never here, Elliot. Emotionally, I mean. You're always in your head, always working, always distant. So you decided to solve that problem by screwing your college boyfriend. He understands me. He makes me feel alive. Emotional connection, I said. Is that what we're calling it now? I thought you were just working late. Don't do that sarcastic thing. This is serious. You're right. It is serious, which is why I filed for divorce. She sat back down, and now the tears came. Real ones, I think. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end it with Ryan. We can start over. No, we can't. Why not? People work through this all the time. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I'd loved for 15 years, who I'd built a life with, who I'd trusted completely, and I felt nothing but cold certainty. Because I don't want to, I said. I don't want to fix this. I don't want to start over. I want you out of my house. Our house. My house, I said. Bought with my inheritance after my uncle passed. Look at the deed. Your name isn't on it. Her face changed then. The tears stopped. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Who are you? She whispered. Someone who's done being lied to, I said. You have 30 days to move out. After that, I'm changing the locks. She grabbed the divorce papers and her purse and left. I heard her car start, heard her pull out of the driveway too fast. Then I was alone in the house, in the silence, in the life I was systematically dismantling. I poured myself a drink, something I rarely did, and sat in the dark. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, there was just the cold calculation of what came next. Maggie was the easy part. The divorce would be straightforward, painful, but clean. Ryan was different. Ryan required something more surgical, more complete. I went to my office and opened my laptop. The financial time bomb I'd been building was almost ready. All it needed was one final push. Ryan's Arts District project had a partner, a local construction firm called Baxter & Sons. They were family-owned, reputable, cautious. They'd agreed to the project because Ryan had seemed solid, but they had a clause in their contract that let them pull out if the financing became uncertain. I'd been slowly making the financing look uncertain for weeks. Now it was time to give Baxter & Sons a reason to walk. I created a comprehensive financial analysis of Pierce Development Group, using all the access Ryan had given me. The analysis was accurate, brutally so. It showed every debt, every obligation, every point of vulnerability. It showed exactly how precarious Ryan's position was. Then I sent it anonymously to Baxter & Sons CEO, along with a note. Thought you should know what you're getting into. The CEO called Ryan the next morning. I was in Ryan's office when it happened. What do you mean you're pulling out? Ryan said into the phone. His voice was tight, controlled. We have a contract. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I could see Ryan's face changing. The confidence was cracking, revealing something harder underneath. That information is confidential. How did you even... He paused, listening. No, those numbers are out of context. Let me explain. But the CEO wasn't interested in explanations. Baxter & Sons was out. The Arts District project just lost its construction partner. Ryan hung up. He sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then he looked at me. Get me a list of alternative construction firms, he said. Ones that can start in the next 2 weeks. That's a tight timeline, I said. I don't care. Make it happen. I made it happen. I compiled a list of 8 firms that could theoretically take on the project. Then I anonymously contacted 6 of them and mentioned concerns about Pierce Development Group's financial stability. By the time Ryan started making calls, 2/3 of his options had already decided he was too risky. The remaining firms sensed weakness. They quoted prices 30% higher than Baxter & Sons. Ryan couldn't afford it. He started calling investors, trying to raise more capital. But investors were getting nervous. They'd seen the article, they'd heard the rumors. They were asking harder questions. One investor pulled out completely, then another. The Arts District project was dying, and with it, Ryan's company. I watched it happen from inside, day after day, meeting after meeting. Ryan was fighting hard, using every trick he knew. But I knew all his moves because I'd studied him. I knew where he was vulnerable because I'd mapped every weakness, and I kept pressing. The anonymous packages started arriving at Ryan's house 2 weeks later. Nothing threatening, nothing illegal, just information. The first package contained copies of his divorce settlements. Public records, perfectly legal to obtain, but embarrassing. Details about his first wife's claims of financial manipulation. Details about his second wife's accusations of infidelity. The second package had photographs. Not of anything illicit, just Ryan at various restaurants and hotels with various women over the past year. Some of them were Maggie, most weren't. I'd hired a private investigator, gave him Ryan's schedule, and let him work. The third package was the most damaging. It contained a detailed financial analysis of every business deal Ryan had done in the past 5 years, highlighting every corner he'd cut, every promise he'd broken, every investor he'd misled. Again, all public information if you knew where to look. I'd just compiled it into one devastating document. Ryan's paranoia was escalating. I could see it at work. He'd started questioning everyone, suspecting everyone. His assistant quit. His office manager gave notice. The rats were leaving the sinking ship. "Someone's targeting me," he said to me one afternoon. We were alone in his office, and he looked exhausted. "What makes you think that?" I asked. "All of this. The delays, the article, the packages. It's too coordinated to be random. Maybe you've just had a run of bad luck." "I don't believe in luck," he said. "Someone's doing this. I just don't know who." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered Maggie laughing on the phone, remembered the lies, remembered the casual way they'd both treated my life like something disposable. "Could be a disgruntled investor," I suggested, "or a competitor. I've been through the list. Nobody has the access to pull this off. Nobody knows enough about my business to hit all these pressure points." "What about someone inside the company?" He looked at me sharply. For a moment, I thought he'd figured it out. But then he shook his head. "No, everyone here has been vetted. Besides, what's the motive?" What indeed, I thought. The next day, I took my revenge to a new level. I'd been monitoring Ryan's email for weeks, using the access he'd given me for project coordination. I found what I was looking for, an email chain with his largest investor, a venture capital firm out of Chicago. They were concerned about the Arts District project, asking questions about the financial projections I'd prepared. I doctored one of Ryan's responses. Nothing major, just changed a few numbers to make the projections look more optimistic than they actually were. Then I forwarded the original email to the VC firm from an anonymous account with a note. "Thought you should see what he's really telling people." The VC firm called the next day. They didn't just pull their investment, they threatened legal action for misrepresentation. Ryan's lawyer got involved. There were meetings, conference calls, threats of lawsuits flying both directions. The whole thing was a mess, and it was all my doing. In the middle of all this, Maggie kept trying to reach me. She'd left 17 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. She wanted to talk. She wanted to explain. She wanted another chance. I didn't respond until she showed up at the house one evening, using the key she still had. "We need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway. "You need to return that key," I said. "You don't live here anymore." "Elliot, please, can we just talk like adults?" "We are talking like adults. One adult who cheated, one adult who filed for divorce." She came inside, uninvited, and closed the door. "I made a mistake, I know that, but destroying our marriage over one mistake seems excessive." "One mistake that lasted 4 months. That's a very sustained mistake." "I'm trying to apologize." "I don't want your apology, Maggie. I want you to sign the papers and move on with your life." "What about your life? You're going to just be alone, bitter, angry?" "I'm not angry," I said, and it was true. The cold certainty had replaced the anger weeks ago. "I'm just done." "Is there someone else? Is that what this is?" I almost laughed. "No, Maggie, there's no one else. I'm just not interested in being married to someone who lies to me every day." "Ryan and I are over," she said. "I ended it. For you. To save our marriage." "You didn't end it for me. You ended it because Ryan's life is falling apart, and he's not the good investment you thought he was." Her face changed. "What are you talking about?" "His company. It's circling the drain, investors pulling out, projects failing, lawsuits pending. Didn't he tell you?" "How do you know about his company?" I smiled. "I'm a data analyst, Maggie. I know about everything." She left after that, and I never saw her again except for the brief meeting at the lawyer's office where she signed the divorce papers. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Ryan had dumped her once his own problems got too overwhelming. She'd chosen the wrong horse, and now she was alone. But I wasn't done with Ryan yet. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Ryan had requested it through my business email, not knowing Elliot Thomas and Elliot Thompson were the same person. He wanted to discuss a personal matter. I arrived early, ordered black coffee, and waited. Ryan showed up 10 minutes late, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His suit was wrinkled. He had bags under his eyes. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sitting down across from me. "You said it was important." "It is." He leaned forward. "Someone's destroying my company. Systematically, methodically, perfectly. I think it might be you." I sipped my coffee. "That's quite an accusation." "You had access to everything. The files, the emails, the investor lists, and you're the only new person in the company during the time all this started happening." "Correlation isn't causation," I said. "Basic statistics." "Then explain how someone got my personal email password. Explain how they knew about the Baxter & Sons contract. Explain how they knew exactly which investors to target." "Sounds like you have security issues." He slammed his hand on the table. The coffee shop went quiet. People looked over. Ryan lowered his voice, but the anger was still there. "Who are you?" he said. "Really?" I set down my coffee cup and looked him in the eye. "My name is Elliot Thompson. I'm married to Maggie Thompson. Or I was, until recently." His face went pale. "Oh, God." "I've been working for you for 6 weeks, Ryan. I've had access to every file, every email, every secret. And yes, I'm the one who's been destroying your company." "You can't do this. This is illegal. This is..." "What? Revenge?" "Yes, it is. But here's the beautiful part. I haven't done anything illegal. Everything I've done has been perfectly above board. I shared public information. I raised legitimate concerns. I performed honest analysis. The fact that it all destroyed you, that's just unfortunate. I'll sue you. I'll go to the police." "For what?" "I didn't break any laws. I didn't threaten you. I didn't steal anything. I was just a consultant doing my job extremely well." He stared at me, and I could see him processing it all. The emails, the packages, the carefully orchestrated collapse of everything he'd built. "Maggie," he said. "This is about Maggie. This is about the fact that you helped my wife betray me. You knew she was married. You didn't care. You thought you could take what you wanted without consequences." "I didn't make her do anything. She wanted to be with me." "Past tense," I said. "She wanted to be with you when you were successful and charming and seemed like a good catch. Now, she won't return your calls. I know because I've been monitoring her phone." "You're insane." "No, I'm thorough. There's a difference." He stood up, and for a moment I thought he might try to hit me. I almost wanted him to. Assault charges would be the perfect ending to his collapse. But he just stood there, trembling with rage and helplessness. "You've ruined me," he said. "No," I replied, standing to face him. "I just revealed who you already were. A con artist living beyond his means, lying to investors, cheating with married women. I didn't create that person. I just made sure everyone else could see him." "What do you want? Money? An apology?" "I don't want anything from you, Ryan. I already got what I wanted. I wanted to watch you lose everything the way I lost everything. And here we are." He looked at me with something close to horror. "You're a monster." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm a monster you created. You and Maggie both. You thought you could play with someone's life and walk away clean. You were wrong." I left him standing there in the coffee shop, surrounded by curious stares. I walked out into the afternoon sun, got in my car, and drove home. That night, I got an email from Ryan's lawyer. They were threatening to sue me for tortious interference, for corporate sabotage, for half a dozen things that would never stick. I forwarded it to my own lawyer with a note, "Let them try." They never did. 3 weeks later, Pierce Development Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Ryan's personal guarantees kicked in. He lost his house, his car, his carefully constructed lifestyle. The last I heard, he was working for a small property management firm in Nevada, making a fraction of what he used to earn. Maggie texted me once after the divorce was final. "I hope you're happy now." I didn't respond. But the answer was no. I wasn't happy. Happy was too simple, too clean. What I felt was satisfied. Complete. Like I'd finished something that needed finishing. I'd spent 15 years being the reliable one, the predictable one, the one who could be taken for granted. And when that trust was betrayed, I became something else entirely. Something cold and calculating and relentless. I destroyed Ryan Pierce's life over the course of 3 months, using nothing but intelligence, access, and patience. I took everything from him the same way he'd helped take everything from me. People think revenge is hot, emotional, impulsive. They're wrong. Real revenge is cold. It's methodical. It's a spreadsheet of pain, carefully calculated and precisely delivered. I sold the house 6 months after the divorce. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I moved to a smaller place across town, something that was just mine, with no history attached. I kept working at DataCorp. I was good at my job, better than ever now that I understood exactly what I was capable of. My boss mentioned promotion possibilities. I nodded and said I'd think about it. I didn't date, didn't try to replace Maggie or find someone new. I'd learned that lesson thoroughly. A trust was expensive, and I wasn't ready to pay that price again. Sometimes late at night, I'd pull up the file I'd built. 19 different pieces of evidence documenting Maggie's affair. The emails, the locations, the bank withdrawals, the hotel receipts. I'd look at it like an artist examining a completed painting, admiring the thoroughness, the attention to detail. Then I'd close the file and go to sleep, dreamless and content. I ran into Maggie once, about a year after everything ended. She was at a grocery store looking tired, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She saw me from across the produce section. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she turned and walked away. I finished my shopping and went home. That was it. No dramatic confrontation, no final words. Just two people who used to know each other, passing in the vegetable aisle, pretending the other didn't exist. Perfect. 2 years after the divorce, I got a letter. It came to my apartment, forwarded from my old address. The envelope was plain, the handwriting unfamiliar. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Mr. Thompson, you don't know me, but I was one of Ryan Pierce's investors. I lost $200,000 when his company collapsed. I've spent the past year investigating what happened, and I know what you did. I know how you systematically destroyed his business from the inside. I'm writing to say thank you. Ryan Pierce defrauded me and 12 other investors over 5 years. He lied, manipulated, and stole. What you did to him was justice. I thought you should know that. Kyle Brown. I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a drawer with all the other documentation from that period of my life. It was validation I hadn't asked for, from someone I'd never met, for actions I'd never regretted. I went back to work the next day. I analyzed data, found patterns, built models. It was what I was good at, what I'd always been good at. But I was different now. I saw things other people missed. I noticed the small lies, the careful omissions, the tiny betrayals people thought were hidden. I'd learned that lesson well. Everyone has vulnerabilities, everyone has secrets, and if you're patient enough, you can map them all. My colleagues treated me the same as always. Reliable Elliot. Quiet Elliot. The guy who could be counted on to deliver accurate reports on time. They didn't know what I was capable of. They didn't know what I'd done. That was fine. I preferred it that way. One evening, I was working late when my boss, Karen, stopped by my desk. "Got a minute?" she asked. "Sure." She sat down, looking uncomfortable. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. 3 months ago, you ran an analysis on our vendor contracts, remember?" "Yes." "And you flagged some irregularities in the payments to TechFlow Solutions." "Right. The invoices didn't match the contract terms. I thought it was worth investigating." "We investigated," she said. "Turns out our purchasing manager was getting kickbacks from TechFlow. He was approving inflated invoices and splitting the difference. He's been doing it for 2 years." "I didn't know that," I said, which was true. I'd only noticed the pattern. "We fired him this morning. He's probably going to jail." She paused. "Did you know what you'd find when you ran that analysis?" "I knew something was off. I didn't know what." She studied me for a long moment. "You're very good at finding things that are off." "It's my job." "It's more than that," she said. "You see things other people don't. It's like you can look at data and see the story it's hiding." "I just pay attention." "Well, keep paying attention," she said, standing up. "The company needs people like you, people who notice when things aren't right." After she left, I sat there thinking about what she'd said. People who notice when things aren't right. That was me now. That was who I'd become. I'd started as someone who trusted too much, who believed in the best in people. Maggie and Ryan had stripped that away, leaving someone harder, colder, more aware. Was that better? I didn't know. But it was honest. It was real. It was someone who wouldn't be fooled again. I finished my work and drove home through the quiet streets. My apartment was dark when I arrived, but I liked it that way. No surprises, no complications. Just silence and solitude and the certainty that came from knowing exactly where I stood. I made dinner, something simple. I ate while reading a book about data visualization techniques. After dinner, I cleaned the kitchen, did some work on my laptop, and went to bed at 10. The routine was comforting, predictable, safe. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about Ryan. I'd wonder where he was, what he was doing, whether he'd rebuilt his life, or whether he was still drowning in the ruins I'd created. I'd think about Maggie, too, though less often. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved to Portland, started over. I hoped she was happy, or maybe I hoped she wasn't. I couldn't tell anymore. Mostly, though, I thought about the person I'd become. The person who could spend 3 months methodically destroying someone's life without losing sleep. The person who could sit across from Ryan in that coffee shop and tell him exactly what I'd done, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Was I a monster, like Ryan had said? Maybe. But if I was, it was a monster built from betrayal and lies, assembled piece by piece from the wreckage of a marriage I'd thought was real. I'd spent 15 years being the good guy, the reliable husband, the trustworthy partner, and it had gotten me nothing but pain. So I'd become something else, something harder, something that couldn't be hurt because it refused to care. 3 years after the divorce, my phone rang at work. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Elliot? The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Who is this? It's Evelyn, Maggie's friend. I remembered her, the friend who was supposedly going through a divorce, providing cover for Maggie's trip to Palm Springs with Ryan. What do you want, Evelyn? I'm calling about Maggie. She's not doing well. That's not my concern anymore. I know you don't owe her anything, but I thought you should know. She's been depressed since the divorce. She lost her real estate license, lost her job. She's been moving from place to place, can't seem to get it together. I felt something flicker in my chest. Not sympathy exactly, but something close to it. Why are you telling me this? Because she asked me to. She wanted you to know that she's sorry. For everything. She knows she destroyed your marriage, destroyed your trust. She knows what she did was unforgivable. Then why call? Because she's human, Elliot. She made terrible choices, but she's still human. And she's suffering for those choices. I was quiet for a moment. Good, I said finally. Excuse me? I said good. She should suffer. She should understand what it feels like to have your life dismantled by someone you trusted. Jesus, Elliot, what happened to you? Maggie happened to me. Ryan happened to me. They taught me that trust is weakness and kindness is something people exploit. So I learned. I adapted. You became cruel. I became honest, I said. I stopped pretending the world was fair or kind or just. I stopped being the victim. You're not a victim. You're a villain. Maybe, I said, but I'm a villain who sleeps fine at night. Can Maggie say the same? Evelyn hung up without another word. I went back to work, but I couldn't focus. The call had shaken something loose, some piece of the armor I'd built around myself. Was I cruel? Was I a villain? The answer was yes. I'd become exactly what I needed to become to survive what they'd done to me. I'd taken the pain and betrayal and forged it into something cold and sharp and effective. Ryan had lost everything. His company, his reputation, his lifestyle. He'd been exposed as the fraud he always was, and I'd been the one to do it. Maggie had lost everything, too. Her marriage, her career, her stability. She was suffering, alone, broken by the consequences of her choices, and I'd lost everything as well. My marriage, my trust, my belief that people were fundamentally good. I'd traded it all for this cold certainty, this armor of calculation and control. None of us had won. We'd all just lost in different ways. But at least I'd chosen my loss. I'd dismantled my own life on my terms, rather than letting them do it to me. That had to count for something, didn't it? I didn't sleep well after Evelyn's call. I kept thinking about Maggie, alone in some apartment in Portland, drowning in regret and depression. Part of me was satisfied. She deserved it. She'd made her choices, and consequences had followed. But part of me, a smaller part I'd tried to kill off, felt something else. Not forgiveness, but maybe understanding. People were weak. They made mistakes. They hurt each other without meaning to, or while meaning to, but not understanding the full weight of what they were doing. I'd become someone who couldn't be hurt, because I'd closed myself off completely. No relationships, no trust, no vulnerability. I was safe, but I was also alone. Was that better than what Maggie had? Was being numb better than suffering? I didn't have an answer. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I looked up Maggie on social media. Her profiles were mostly private now, but I could see her profile picture. She looked older, tired. The bright energy that had defined her was gone, replaced by something hollow. I closed the browser and sat there, staring at my desk. What had I wanted? Revenge. I'd gotten it. I'd destroyed Ryan, helped destroy Maggie, emerged victorious from the wreckage of my marriage. but victory felt empty. It felt like I'd won a game no one should have been playing in the first place. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Ryan. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say something. You were right. About all of it. I was a fraud, a liar, someone who took what he wanted without thinking about consequences. What you did to me was brutal, but it was fair. I deserved it. I just wanted you to know that I understand that now. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just wanted you to know that I get it." I read the message 3 times. He got it. After 3 years of suffering, he understood what he'd done. He'd learned the lesson I'd spent 3 months teaching him. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I just felt tired. I typed a response. "Okay." That was all, just one word. Because what else was there to say? That night, I did something I hadn't done since the divorce. I pulled out a photo album from the back of my closet, pictures of Maggie and me from better times, our wedding, vacations, holidays with family, all the moments that had felt real and permanent and true. Had they been lies? Had she been faking it even then? Or had something real existed once, something that had slowly eroded under the weight of routine and distance and unmet needs? I'd spent 3 years believing in the first version, that it had all been a lie, that Maggie had never loved me, that I'd been a fool from the beginning. But looking at these photos, I wasn't sure anymore. The happiness in her eyes looked genuine. The love seemed real. Maybe it had been real. Maybe it had just faded over time, worn down by my emotional distance and her need for something I couldn't give. And instead of dealing with that honestly, she'd chosen the coward's way out. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. That didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made her human rather than monstrous. And if she was human, what did that make me? What did that make my revenge? I'd destroyed 2 people's lives over a betrayal that, while painful, was also distressingly common. People cheated, marriages failed, hearts broke. It happened every day to millions of people. Most of them didn't respond by systematically dismantling the lives of everyone involved. I put the photo album away and sat in the dark, thinking about the person I'd become. I'd started as Elliot Thompson, loyal husband, reliable employee, someone who trusted and believed and loved. I'd become someone else, someone who saw patterns others missed, who understood vulnerabilities, who could strike with surgical precision at exactly the right pressure points. I'd become dangerous. The question was, what did I do with that now? 6 months after Ryan's text, I got an email from Maggie. "Elliot, I know I have no right to ask this, but I'd like to meet. Just once. I need to say some things to you in person. No expectations, no agenda, just closure. If you're willing, let me know. Maggie." I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the wall I'd built between my old life and my new one. Part of me was curious about what she could possibly have to say that would matter. After 3 days, I responded, "Next Saturday, 2 p.m., Riverside Park, North Entrance." Her reply came immediately. "Thank you." Saturday arrived cold and gray, threatening rain. I got to the park early and sat on a bench overlooking the river. The water was dark, moving fast with spring runoff from the mountains. Maggie arrived at exactly 2 p.m. I saw her walking up the path, and my first thought was how much she'd changed. She was thinner, her hair shorter. She moved carefully, like someone who'd learned to be cautious about everything. She sat down on the other end of the bench, keeping distance between us. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "What did you want to say?" She looked at the river for a long moment before speaking. "I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. Not for getting caught, not for the consequences. Sorry for betraying you, for lying to you, for treating 15 years of marriage like it was disposable." "Okay. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know sorry is just a word. But I needed to say it anyway." "Fine. You said it. I also wanted to tell you that you were right. About everything. I was selfish and shallow, and I destroyed something good because I was too stupid to recognize what I had. If you're looking for me to disagree or offer comfort, you're going to be disappointed." "I'm not looking for that," she said. "I'm just trying to be honest for once." We sat in silence for a while. A jogger ran past. A couple walked by with a dog. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the wreckage sitting on this bench. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "I guess. Did you do it? What happened to Ryan's company? Was that you?" I considered lying, but there didn't seem to be much point anymore. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I thought so. It was too precise, too perfectly targeted. It had your fingerprints all over it." "Are you going to do anything about it?" "Like what? Turn you in?" She almost laughed. "For what? Being smart? Being thorough? You didn't break any laws. You just outmaneuvered him? That's one way to put it. It was revenge, she said. Calculated, methodical revenge. You destroyed him because he helped destroy you. Yes, and you don't regret it. No. She looked at me then, really looked at me. What happened to you, Elliot? You used to be kind, gentle. You would never have done something like this. You happened to me, I said. You and Ryan. You taught me that kindness was weakness, that trust was a liability, that the only way to survive was to be harder than everyone else. So you became a monster. I became what I needed to be? Do you even feel anything anymore? Or did you kill that part of yourself too? I thought about her question. Did I feel anything? Anger? No. Sadness? No. Pain? No. I'd successfully excised all the emotions that made me vulnerable, but I'd also excised joy, hope, love, everything that made life worth living. I feel satisfied, I said. I feel like I solved a problem. That's enough. Is it, though? Are you happy? Happy is overrated. Happy is what people chase their whole lives and never find. I'm content with being effective. She shook her head. You're lying to yourself. You're not content. You're empty. You hollowed yourself out trying to hurt us. And now there's nothing left. Maybe, I said. But at least I'm not drowning in regret like you are. She flinched. You're right. I am drowning. Every day I wake up and remember what I did, what I lost. I can't sleep. I can't work. I can barely function. Is that what you wanted? Yes. Well, congratulations. You succeeded. You destroyed Ryan, you destroyed me, and you destroyed yourself in the process. We're all miserable now. Everyone loses. At least I chose my misery. She stood up. I came here hoping to find some piece of the man I married, some hint that Elliot Thompson was still in there somewhere. But he's gone, isn't he? You killed him along with everything else. I didn't answer. She was right, and we both knew it. She walked away, back down the path toward the parking lot. I watched her go, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no sadness. Just the cold certainty that this was how it had to be. I sat on that bench for another hour, watching the river flow past, thinking about the choices I'd made and the person I'd become. Was I a monster? Yes, probably. But I was a monster who'd been forged in the fires of betrayal, shaped by lies and manipulation. I was what the world had made me, and I was fine with that. Life continued. That was the strange part. After everything, after all the destruction and revenge and transformation, life just kept going. I went to work, I analyzed data, I found patterns, I was promoted to senior analyst, then to manager. My salary increased, my responsibilities expanded, I was respected, valued, successful. I was alone. Not lonely, exactly. Lonely implied wanting something you didn't have. I'd moved past wanting. I'd moved past needing human connection in any meaningful way. I had colleagues, not friends. I had routines, not relationships. I had control, not happiness. It was enough. It had to be enough. 4 years after the divorce, I was working on a major project for DataCorp. We were analyzing consumer fraud patterns for a banking client, looking for suspicious account activity. It was complex work, exactly the kind of thing I excelled at. I was reviewing a data set when I noticed something odd, a series of transactions that followed a specific pattern. Small amounts, different accounts, but the timing was too regular. Someone was laundering money through dozens of accounts, thinking the small amounts would go unnoticed. I built a model, mapped the connections, traced the flow of money. Within 3 days, I had the entire scheme documented. 18 different accounts, all controlled by the same person. Over 2 years, they'd moved nearly $1 million through the system. I compiled my findings and sent them to my boss. The FBI got involved. The person behind the scheme was arrested. The bank recovered most of the money. I got a bonus and a commendation for my work. Karen called me into her office after everything was settled. You did excellent work on this, she said. The client is thrilled. The FBI was impressed. You single-handedly uncovered a major fraud operation. Just pattern recognition, I said. Nothing special. It's more than that, Elliot. You have a gift for seeing things others miss, for finding the truth hidden in the data. It's my job. I'm offering you a promotion, she said. Director of Advanced Analytics, your own team, bigger projects, significant increase in salary. I considered it. More responsibility, more power, more control. Everything I'd built my new life around. I'll take it, I said. She smiled. I thought you would. You're exactly the kind of person we need in leadership. Someone who's not afraid to dig deep, who won't overlook things just because they're uncomfortable. Someone who's become a monster, I thought. Someone who can look at human behavior and see nothing but data points and patterns. But I didn't say that. I just nodded and thanked her and went back to my desk. That night, I got a notification on my phone. Someone had viewed my LinkedIn profile. I checked to see who it was. Ryan Pierce. I clicked on his profile. He'd reinvented himself over the past 4 years. He was working for a small consulting firm now, helping struggling businesses turn around. His profile photo showed someone humbler, older, more cautious. The swagger was gone. I wondered why he'd looked at my profile. Curiosity, nostalgia, some lingering anger? I'd never know, and it didn't matter. Ryan Pierce was part of my past, a problem I'd solved and moved on from. Except I hadn't really moved on, had I? I was still living in the aftermath of what I'd done to him, what I'd done to Maggie, what I'd done to myself. I'd spent 4 years building a successful career, accumulating power and respect and control. But I hadn't built a life. I'd built a fortress, safe and empty and cold. Was that better than what Maggie had? She was suffering, drowning in regret, but at least she was feeling something. At least she was still human. I'd become something else, something efficient and effective and hollow. I thought about that for a long time. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed, because there was work tomorrow, and work was all I had left. 5 years after the divorce, I attended my high school reunion. It was at a hotel downtown, filled with people who had lived their lives and aged with time. I arrived alone, as usual, and observed the crowd from a corner. I was approached by Andrea Brown, a former classmate. She seemed confident and comfortable in her life, and we chatted about work and life. She asked if I was happy, and I admitted I wasn't. I said I had financial security and career success, but not happiness. She told me that happiness required vulnerability, and that I had built a prison for myself by rejecting that. Her words struck me deeply. I had built walls to protect myself after my wife's betrayal, but I realized that in doing so, I had lost my ability to connect and feel. I left the reunion early, reflecting on what Andrea had said. I had chosen to live a life of isolation, rejecting vulnerability, but I wondered if that had truly made me stronger, or just a prisoner to my own fear. At home, I realized I had spent 5 years punishing myself, and that even though I had gotten revenge on Maggie and Ryan, I had lost everything that mattered in the process. I thought about calling Andrea, but instead I went to bed, still trapped by the habit of isolation. But a small crack had formed in my walls, and maybe, eventually, it would be enough to change. 6 years after the divorce, I made a decision. It was a Saturday morning, and I was sitting in my apartment drinking coffee and reading financial reports. This was how I spent most weekends now: work, solitude, the comfortable numbness of routine. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Elliot Thompson?" A woman's voice, official sounding. "Yes." "This is Patricia Williams from Mercy General Hospital. Do you know a Margaret Thompson?" My chest tightened. "I used to. We're divorced." "She's listed you as her emergency contact. I'm afraid she was brought in last night. An overdose. Pills and alcohol." The world seemed to stop. "Is she alive?" "Yes, but she's in serious condition. She's asking for you." I should have hung up. I should have said I wasn't interested, that Maggie wasn't my responsibility anymore, that she'd made her choices and I'd made mine. Instead, I said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The hospital was across town. I drove faster than I should have, my mind racing. Maggie had tried to kill herself. Maggie, who'd always been so full of life, so vibrant and energetic, had given up. Because of me? No, not just me. Because of everything. The affair, the divorce, the collapse of her career, the years of depression. But I'd contributed. I'd wanted her to suffer, and she had suffered. Was this what I'd wanted? I found her in the ICU. She looked small in the hospital bed, pale and fragile. An IV ran into her arm. Monitors beeped steadily. Her eyes were closed. I sat in the chair next to her bed and waited. After a while, she opened her eyes. It took her a moment to focus on me. "Elliot," she whispered, "I'm here." "Why did you come?" I didn't have a good answer. "They called me. I didn't think you would. I didn't think you'd care." "I'm not sure I do," I said honestly, "but I'm here anyway." She closed her eyes again. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the affair. For lying to you. For all of it. I've wanted to give up for years. Last night I finally tried." "Why?" "Because I can't live with what I did. Because I destroyed everything good in my life and I don't know how to fix it. because every day I wake up and hate myself a little more. I sat there listening to her breathe, to the monitors beeping, to the hospital sounds filtering in from the hallway. This was what revenge looked like. Not the cold satisfaction I'd imagined, but this. A broken woman in a hospital bed, barely alive, drowning in regret. I destroyed Ryan, I said. Did you know that? I suspected. I infiltrated his company, sabotaged his deals, ruined his reputation. I did it methodically, perfectly. I wanted him to lose everything. Did it make you feel better? At the time, yes. Now? I shook my head. I don't know. I spent 6 years becoming someone I don't recognize, someone cold and calculating and empty. I got my revenge, but I lost myself. We're both lost, she said. Yeah. We sat in silence. Outside the window, the sun was rising over the city. A new day, indifferent to our suffering, indifferent to our choices. I don't forgive you, I said finally. I can't. What you did hurt me in ways I'm still dealing with. I know. But I don't want you dead either. That's not what I wanted. I wanted you to understand what you did, to feel the consequences. But not this. Then what do you want? I thought about it. I want you to get better, to get help, to find some way to live with what you did without destroying yourself. Why do you care? I don't know if I do, I said. But maybe seeing you like this made me realize something. Revenge doesn't fix anything. It doesn't heal the wound. It just creates new wounds for everyone involved. Profound, she said with a weak smile. When did you become a philosopher? When I realized I'd spent 6 years being miserable to prove a point. A nurse came in to check Maggie's vitals. I stepped out into the hallway and called Andrea. She answered on the 3rd ring. Elliot, is everything okay? No, I said. But I think I'm ready to try to make it okay. What does that mean? It means I'm tired of being empty. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of letting the worst thing that ever happened to me define the rest of my life. That's good, she said. That's really good. What changed? I looked back through the window at Maggie, broken and small in her hospital bed. I saw what revenge actually looks like, and it's not what I thought it would be. We talked for a while. Andrea told me about a therapist she knew, someone who specialized in trauma and rebuilding after loss. She offered to have lunch sometime, to introduce me to her husband and kids, to help me remember what normal human connection looked like. I said yes to all of it. Then I went back into Maggie's room and sat with her until she fell asleep. I didn't owe her that, but maybe I owed it to myself, to the person I used to be before betrayal turned me into someone else. When I left the hospital, I drove to the river and sat on the same bench where I'd met Maggie 2 years ago. The water was still moving, dark and fast, carrying everything downstream. I thought about the past 6 years, the discovery, the investigation, the revenge, the cold satisfaction of watching Ryan's life collapse, the empty feeling that came after when I realized victory didn't feel like I thought it would. I'd spent 6 years being right, being justified in my anger, my coldness, my revenge, and I had been right. Maggie and Ryan had betrayed me. They'd deserved consequences. But being right hadn't made me happy. It hadn't healed the wound. It had just turned me into someone I didn't want to be. I pulled out my phone and looked at Ryan's LinkedIn profile one more time. He was still working at that small consulting firm, still rebuilding his life from the ruins I'd created. I sent him a message. I heard Maggie's in the hospital. Thought you might want to know. She's at Mercy General. He responded 10 minutes later. Thank you. I'll visit her. That was all. No accusations, no anger, no demands for explanation. Just acknowledgement. Maybe he'd changed too. Maybe destroying his life had forced him to become someone better. Or maybe he was just as broken as the rest of us, trying to survive the aftermath of choices we couldn't take back. I drove home and started making calls to the therapist Andrea had recommended, to an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, to my brother across the country, who I'd been avoiding because I didn't want to explain what had happened to my marriage. I started trying to rebuild what I'd spent 6 years tearing down. Not my marriage, that was gone forever, but my humanity, my capacity to feel, to connect, to live as something other than a calculating machine. It was hard, harder than revenge had been. Revenge was simple, focused, satisfying in its way. Recovery was messy, uncertain, painful, but it was also honest. And after 6 years of living in the cold certainty of my justified anger, honesty felt almost revolutionary. 3 months later, I visited Maggie again. She was out of the hospital, living in a halfway house, working on recovery. She looked better, healthier, more alive. Thank you for coming that day, she said. The doctor said if I'd been alone much longer, I wouldn't have made it. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it because I needed to see what my revenge had created. And it wasn't worth it. Destroying you and Ryan didn't fix what was broken in me. It just broke me differently. So what now? Now I try to figure out how to be human again, how to trust people without being naive, how to be careful without being cruel. If you figure it out, let me know, she said. I'm working on the same thing. We talked for an hour, not about the affair or the revenge or the past, about the future, about recovery, about the slow process of becoming whole again after being shattered. When I left, I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 years. Not happiness, not yet, but hope. The possibility that life could be more than patterns and data, and the cold satisfaction of proving I was right. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners, learning how to talk to people without analyzing their every word for hidden meanings. I joined Andrea and her husband for dinner parties. I reconnected with my brother, spent a week visiting him and his family. I was still good at my job, still successful, still respected, but I stopped letting work be my entire identity. I started reading fiction again instead of just technical manuals. I took up hiking, I adopted a dog, small things, normal things. The kind of things I'd abandoned when I decided being invulnerable was more important than being alive. 7 years after the divorce, I ran into Ryan at a coffee shop downtown. We saw each other at the same moment, and there was a split second where we both considered leaving. But we didn't. We nodded. He came over to my table. "Can I sit?" he asked. "Sure." We sat there for a moment, two men who'd destroyed each other's lives, trying to figure out what to say. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "For the affair, for the lies, for all of it. What I did was wrong. I knew it was wrong at the time, and I did it anyway." "Okay. And I want you to know that what you did to me, the revenge, it was brutal. But it was also necessary. I needed to hit bottom. I needed to lose everything to understand what I'd become." "You're welcome," I said, not sure what the appropriate response was. He almost smiled. "I'm not thanking you. I'm just saying I understand it. And I'm saying I'm sorry." "I'm sorry, too," I said, and meant it. What I did was calculated and cruel. I targeted every vulnerability you had. I enjoyed watching you suffer. That's not who I want to be. Who do you want to be? Someone who can be hurt without destroying himself or others in response. Someone who can be human without being a victim. "Let me know if you figure out how," he said. "I'm still working on it myself." We talked for 20 minutes. It was strange, surreal, two former enemies drinking coffee and discussing recovery. But it was also cathartic. We'd both spent years trapped in the aftermath of choices we couldn't take back. Maybe talking about it was the only way forward. When we parted, we shook hands. Not friends. We'd never be friends. But no longer enemies either. Just two people trying to survive the wreckage we'd created together. I walked home through the city, past the buildings and the people and the endless flow of normal life. And I felt okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. I'd spent 6 years proving I was right, that Maggie and Ryan deserved to suffer, that my cold calculation was superior to their messy emotions. And I had been right. But being right had cost me almost as much as the betrayal had. Maybe more. So I was trying something different now. I was trying to be human again, to be vulnerable, to connect, to risk pain for the possibility of something better. It was terrifying, but it was also real. I got home and found a message on my phone from Andrea. "Dinner this weekend? There's someone I want you to meet. Her name's Rachel. She's a friend from work. Recently divorced, figuring life out. I think you two might understand each other." I stared at the message for a long time. Every instinct I'd developed over the past 6 years told me to decline, to stay safe, to avoid the risk of being hurt again. But that's what had made me miserable. Safety without connection was just another form of prison. I typed back, "Sure. Saturday work?" Her response came immediately. "Perfect." I set the phone down and looked around my apartment. It was clean, organized, empty. The same way I'd been for 6 years. Maybe it was time to let some chaos back in. Some mess, some uncertainty, some risk. Maybe it was time to live again instead of just surviving. I thought about Maggie in her halfway house, working on recovery. I thought about Ryan rebuilding his life from scratch. I thought about myself trying to remember how to be human after spending years being a calculating machine. We'd all lost. We'd all suffered. We'd all become people we didn't recognize. But we were still here, still trying, still fighting to become something better than the worst things we'd done to each other. That had to count for something. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file I'd built 7 years ago. The comprehensive documentation of Maggie's affair. 19 different pieces of evidence, meticulously organized, perfectly preserved. I'd looked at that file hundreds of times over the years. It had been my justification, my proof that I was right to do what I did. Now I looked at it one last time, then I deleted it, all of it. The emails, the location data, the bank records. 7 years of rage and calculation gone with a click. I didn't need it anymore. I knew what had happened. I knew what I'd done in response. I knew the cost we'd all paid. Keeping the evidence didn't change any of that. It just kept me trapped in a past I needed to move beyond. The screen showed the recycling bin. I emptied it. Then I closed the laptop and walked away. Outside, the sun was setting. Tomorrow I'd go to work. Tomorrow I'd have dinner with Andrea and Rachel. Tomorrow I'd keep trying to figure out how to be human again. But tonight I just sat in the fading light and felt something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Peace, not the cold certainty of revenge. Not the empty satisfaction of being right. Just peace. The quiet acceptance that what happened had happened, that I'd responded the way I had, and that now I was trying to do better. It wasn't forgiveness. I wasn't sure I believed in forgiveness for betrayal that deep. But it was release. Letting go of the need to keep hurting them, to keep hurting myself, to keep proving over and over that I'd been justified. I'd gotten my revenge. I'd destroyed their lives. I'd proved I was smarter, more capable, more dangerous than they'd realized. And it had left me empty and alone and barely human. So now I was trying something different. Not revenge, not forgiveness. Just moving forward, carrying the scars, but not letting them define everything I did. The phone buzzed, a text from Andrea. Looking forward to Saturday. Rachel's excited to meet you. I smiled. A real smile. The first one in years that wasn't calculating or cold or performative. Me too, I typed back. And I meant it. 7 years ago, I'd discovered my wife's betrayal and transformed myself into something cold and calculating and effective. I'd gotten my revenge perfectly, completely, devastatingly. But revenge hadn't saved me. It had just turned me into a different kind of victim, trapped by my own need to prove I couldn't be hurt. Now I was trying to save myself. Not by being invulnerable, but by being human. By risking pain for the possibility of connection. By choosing life over safety. It was terrifying. It was uncertain. It was probably going to hurt, but it was real. And after 7 years of living in the cold comfort of my justified rage, real was exactly what I needed. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights were coming on, thousands of them, each one representing someone trying to live their life, make their choices, survive their pain. I was one of them now. Not separate, not superior, not invulnerable, just human, flawed and scarred and trying my best. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined 7 years ago when I first discovered Maggie's betrayal. Back then, I'd imagined triumph, vindication, the satisfaction of watching my enemies suffer. I'd gotten all of that, and it had nearly destroyed me. This ending was quieter, less dramatic. Just a man standing at a window, looking at city lights, preparing to try again at this messy, painful, beautiful thing called life. But it was honest. And after 7 years of living a lie, pretending my revenge had made me whole, honesty felt like victory enough. The revenge was over. The destruction was done. Now came the harder part, living with what we'd all become, and trying to find some path forward through the wreckage. I didn't know if I'd succeed. I didn't know if Maggie or Ryan would either, but we were trying, and that was something. It was enough.